Yes, yes. This this approach was very important. Actually, I was always talented in art, but I took it for granted. I never cultivated it. Actually, I was doing scientific school. Up to the moment I met with the Bhagavad Gita of the great master Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, so of the Vaishnava school. So I had this approach, and of course, the first thing was an existential approach. I wanted to understand more than myself. I wanted to go out of the limitations of my culture. Any culture, although can be ancient, sublime, wise, whatever, has some kind of limits. Some kind of limits. We always have, this question in mind of who I am, where I'm going, where I'm coming from, where I'm going, etc. And so in that moment, that particular crisis, because it's always a crisis, something breaks down, in the general system of your life. We belong to a greater system than our individual existence. Okay. So something broke down, and so this crisis led me to make more question about the existence, about the death and life, and all the difficulties of life, how to overcome this crisis, existential crisis. So in that moment, Bhagavad Gita appeared in my life. In that moment, I got the answer, although I was studying it for about 4 years. No, was not just a moment, but this intense research about the existential problems led me to a radical choice. That if I wanted to really change something in my life, I had to go deep in a more radical life, spiritual life. Okay, so all of this took me up to a moment in which my artistic skill was recasted. Actually, there were already a group in the monastery where I was. I mean, it was a Hare Krishna temple, and that was in Florence particularly. So there were already some devotee artists. They already started to illustrate the books, particularly the Bhagavad Gita. So they came into Italy at a certain point to go deeper into artistic skill, their artistic skill in Florence, which is the capital of Renaissance, which is the capital of Italian art, where everything started, after the Roman experience and then the Middle Age. Florence was, it's very much important, for the artistic culture. And so they came here, tried to study. They saw my drawings. I was just making drawings, with a pencil, simple like that. And they immediately catch me, proposing me to join their group, and to go to India for a long trip and try to understand the Indian art, the multi-form Indian art, and try to apply to the art that we were trying to use in order to illustrate the books, So there was a match between Western and Eastern world culture. So what happened to me, is that in that moment, my artistic inclinations came out. I had the opportunity to cultivate them, So and then I started my actual artistic career. I started with the Bhagavad Gita illustrations. I started with the Srimad Bhagavatam illustration, and after that, the Mahabharata. Because the Indian culture and Indian world and tradition is very, very colorful. It's very similar. It's very personal also. I mean, the Indians tend to identify the animistic side of nature, something that is beyond the phenomena. So all these demigods, and God is himself, like Vishnu, Shiva, it's very, very colorful and variegated. So I stick to that, and I applied what was the artistic Western experience, Florent Italian experience in art. I start to apply those models to the contents of the Indian scriptures. You understand? Then what I will
Yes.
say, then it accompanied me all my life. So my first artistical train happened like that. Then after 10 years of this experience, I start to make a personal experience, a personal development of my personal style like this, living into my contemporary contest of art, you know. Same thing is in India, I think, after the colonization, after when the independence start, also the artists, they start to have a certain modern or contemporary development of artistic field. But and then I stop. The difference is that the development, the cultural development, intellectual development, and the knowledge development of India is a little different by the Western development of culture, like or evolution of culture. Like the general culture, they left the religion apart, the tradition apart, and they started the avant-garde, so-called avant-garde, impressionism and expressionism and futurism. There are this avant-garde that already made the point that everything in the past has to be left, has to be canceled, in order to have the mind free to create something new. In India, it didn't happen that much. In India, and I really appreciate that because I brought that experience with me all my life in all my research. I was always kind of trying to find icons to express my art. And so, in India, the art developed, but it always had a very strong tradition, a very strong, very, very strong connection with tradition. So you see modern gesture in art, but you see also these figures that is directly descending from all the figures that in India they may, I don't know, in Tamil or in Rajasthan in art or in Bengali art. There are so many multiform artistic expression in India. So this is with me. I'm related to it, even if I don't make subject directly connected with India. Still, all this experience is with me. Yes, but the point is that everything started when I was in a radical phase of my life, studying the Vedas, studying the ancient scriptures, studying the traditional Indian art, that was manifested in the place where we were on the Murti, the deities. So that's a very direct connection between artistic gesture and the Indian and the spirituality. That's directly connected. So I was in front of that, and studying the books I took for as a bona fide the teaching of, as I said, of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and he was very much insisting in the position of the guru, the bona fide guru, authentic guru that is coming from a parampara system. Parampara word, parampara is, the disciplic succession coming down. That in somehow or other grant that there are no deviation by the original teaching, that are coming directly from God for those who believe in God and believe in the Brahman, they believe in Vishnu, in Shiva, Brahma, So those who believe in the spiritual principle, they have to find out this disciplic succession. There are several Guru Parampara. And so because I started sticking with that, I was kind of confident, Of course, I always heard different opinions in which you say, oh, but Arjuna's complexion was whitish. Arjuna's complexion actually was dark. So this, I was just adjusting. I was just making a choice, and not knowing if I was wrong. If I was authentic in that, because when I work on these spiritual and historical subjects, I care mostly as artist to the aesthetic balance, harmony, and appearance, So if something is in the economy of the general aesthetic of the painting, in the composition, these things, I don't mind if there is some deviation, unless it is an heretic deviation. I pay attention to that. And but for example, in my composition, there are many times architectures. Have you seen some of my Mahabharata paintings? I guess.
Yes.
And so there are this big town, to give an idea of a glorious past, that Mahabharata describes, of these important values of civil living together, And so trying to describe that atmosphere, this huge palace, actually, it was an empire at that time, as it described, Yudhishthira, you are supposed to be the empire, but before there was Dhritarashtra, to be the emperor, so there were aspects of very magnificent civilization. So in that case, I was building up these palaces, these architectures, but taking, there are no detailed description of what was happening at that time, or how are aspect of the Mahabharata contest, like a big town, Indraprastha, Dwaraka, and so on, Hastinapur, there were all these big towns. So actually, it was nice because it was a chance to me, with some speculation, to try to imagine this grandiosity. You understand? So I was not worried actually to deviate, even because I was trained when I was a Hindu monk. I was trained to be as much bona fide and sincere possible. It's real difficult choice because everyone is very well described in their emotions, in their mentality. Basically they're all around the warrior, the kshatriya mentality, so of honor, sincerity, honor, and fighting spirit, and defending spirit of the person in difficulties and defending the society, you know. But in intimate sense, I'm very much intrigued by Karna. Karna, he's a kind of anti-hero, I would say. He's a hero. He's a real hero. He was, of course, there are all these things of cursings, but actually everyone is victim of circumstances in one sense. He's a victim. He's a kind of victim of circumstances that set him in that particular position, in the position of in close to Duryodhana, which is kind of the bad hero of the story, the bad one, and so somehow or other, Karna, he has some of my solidarity, for a person that has lost his great opportunity of being a hero, and he little by little tried to recuperate his natural position in the society as a Kshatriya, because he is the son of Kunti and the sun god and Vivashvan, So he is, by birth, he's very much inclined to be, and he manifested that he was inclined to be a warrior, but the circumstances put him into hiding in disguise, hero, in hidden hero, he was feeling, so he was having this tremendous conflict in himself, so I am intrigued by conflictual personality, personality that are not clearly good and bad, as you were saying, just hero or no hero. He's uh, an inner hero also. He's not a hero outside because he was strong. He was born with armor. He was cheated again to take off his armor. Otherwise, and he is the first of the Pandavas, practically speaking. He is the first brother, So this position, of course, I like the hero like everyone, like the Lord of the Ring, which good and bad are very splitted, and at that time, according to the description of the Mahabharata, the personality, the evil personality and the God personality, godly personality, it was kind of very much separated, between person, like Arjuna, he's loyal, he's a full hero, he's a pure devotee of Krishna, you know. Um, so the evil, the good and the bad was very clearly separated into the personality, into the characters, okay? But in this age, this ambiguous personality, good and bad, evil and good, they are inside each person, in different quantity, in different level. So we try to repress our evil part, by discipline, by yoga, religion, morality, and civilization, the society, in which the laws, the under law, they are not to kill the others, not to harm the others, So we fight inside ourselves. And I saw something in Karna, you know. between these five. And there is a painting in which there is Karna is lying on the thigh of Mother Kunti. She reveals her song. It's very moving moment. And that's why I say that I prefer that, because those moments in Karna's life moved me very much. When I was reading the Mahabharata, choosing the images, that and then I illustrate and then I painted, I was many times I was crying, because it's so intense. The Mahabharata is so intense, that move, maybe the first layer of our inner world, our sentiments, our feeling, our passion, I would say. Then you can go deeper, you go into the intelligence, you can go into your ego, down to or into the soul, So that was, and also, as always, because I was a Krishna devotee, actually I liked very much Krishna way, because in that case, it's a philosophical point that Krishna is the supreme God on my idea. The supreme God, he's the only really completely absolute free person. So he can do whatever he wants. He is what he wants, There is no difference between his desire and catching his desire, doing his desire. What is desire is already real. He already has, So, and so you see his personality. Sometimes you think, oh, he's betraying his vows. He vowed, not to take part directly to the battle, Kurukshetra, But sometimes you see that he defend Arjuna, and he do things that are against the laws, but just, this is because he's over the laws, So actually, the action of Krishna are called pastimes, lila. The word lila.
Yeah,
Lilas as pastime. So he's actually playing his role in Mahabharata as an actor plays, his pastime or his play. You understand my point? So actually, mine is not completely Western technique. Okay, basically, yes. I use what I learned in my background as Italian. I grow up with Michelangelo, Raffaello, the great master of Renaissance, and all the development and evolution of the Italian and Western art, So basically, um, I wanted to use the Renaissance and Baroque period style, Why? Because the idea was to give a sort of reality to the images that take the observer to the point of considering those subjects as it would be historical moment, not legend, but historical moment. I took also, I will explain better, but the point is that the beginning of this experience to me was about taking the Hindu model or the Vaishnava model as explanation of reality, as a model of reality. So everything is narrated in those scriptures, the Mahabharata, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, the Puranas also. There are so many stories that are taken as a legend or symbol of something else, symbol of the evolution of our individual consciousness. But at that time, I was taking that as a real model that you can apply to any level of life, intimate life and society, social life, political life, whatever. So with this vision, that thinking that they were not legend, they were existing people, existing entities, the Renaissance kind of art, Renaissance style was fit to give a realistic idea of those stories. And the main idea was that Krishna, being considered God, being God, he's as real as us. Actually, he's the reality. And we are, a part of this reality. We exist because he exists. You understand? You can say even Shiva, okay? Maybe it's closer to you. But the concept is because God is as real as we are. Actually, we are really as God is real. My spiritual master said, okay, let's try to give a realistic idea of Krishna that doesn't remain an abstract concept like God concept, God Father, or whatever. He is real. He has got a real form, which is not material form, but he has got a real form, and he presents himself as an avatar in the material world. So everybody that time was there, 5,000 years ago, they could see Krishna. They could relate with him as a normal, not normal, but as a real person, So this was the challenge. And, there is a detail, a very interesting detail to me that he was saying, the spiritual master, not all the spiritual master are scripture like a script is called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or called even the Nectar of Devotion. It's a book from time of Krishna Chaitanya. Chaitanya, you heard about the prophet, okay? He was an avatar. From that time, there are description of Krishna as the writer would have visions of him in the spiritual world, would have this vision, would have the access of seeing him in person, and he was described in details. So, there are certain proportion. He's a threefold figure with the flute, and he has got a yellow dhoti. He has got the peak of feather. He has got a very dark how you say, complexion, dark skin, let's say. He's described as the color of the cloud, a cloud when it's full of rain, So all the descriptions, they were in my mind, that I were trying, and all myself and the other devotees also that were artists that were working on this. They were using all these descriptions just to give an idea, a visual idea of the deity of Krishna. And the other thing is that he is made of spiritual energy, which is not material energy. We are made according to the laws of nature, material nature. So we stand up because we have bones, we have muscles, there is an whole structure that stay together around the soul, stay together, that is meant to live in this world. We breathe oxygen, so we are completely conditioned and related to this world, But a spiritual body is made of something else, you know. He has no internal side or external side. It is the same thing. And it's an energy which is eternal, is full of bliss, you know, and full of knowledge. You know, see, these are the characteristic of a spiritual body, you know, and is self-effulgence, is made of Brahman, Brahma Jyoti, is made of light, you know. So we had to give a realistic idea of the God, you know, but in the same time, we should describe a spiritual body. So that was the challenge, the real challenge, how to make a spiritual body when your only experience is of material body. My experience, my only experience of material body. We speak each other, we look each other, we know how we are shaped and made, you know. So this is the solely experience of a body. So the challenge was how to make this spiritual body credible, realistic, and self-effulgent and spiritual, you know. So in the Western world, we tend to hide the miseries, you know, which is not honest. It's not honest for our consciousness because it doesn't allow to think. You know, we immediately, you know, start to think of death, you know, when you see this image in the war. In the wars, all of a sudden, a war start, explode, and we see these horrible images, horrible thing, and so much death, you know. So we start to think, you know. So India never hide very much this different aspect of life, you know. Everything is very sincerely showed, you know. So you go in Varanasi and you see, that's why you see all India, you know. That's why I made that painting that symbolically is very, very important, you know, and it's, of course, my vision of it. And so that I think intrigued a little bit the president, the prime minister Narendra Modi, because you know he was asking why an Italian, a Western artist look at India. Why is he interested? You know, generally after colonization, there was the interest for the Indian to come, immigrate, you know, in the Commonwealth, you know, and so there was. It seems that the Indian world was more interested to the Western world than how much the Western world was looking to India, at least from a cultural point of view. You know, so much that India today has changed a lot. Getting closer for some custom, you know, the cars, the industries, and you know the consumes, you know the big shops, the brands, whatever, you know. But then in the 60s, there was even the cultural answer of Indians. So many Western boys and girls, you know, start to look at India, to look at the culture, to go deep in what actually Indian culture developed in his evolution. All this principle of searching the self. This is the basic principle, you know, because every human being is looking for himself. You know, he's trying to understand who we are, who I am. You know, this is the question. You know, so the Western culture went up to an external evolution, extroverted evolution. You know, try to inquire the nature. You know, how is the nature? You know, try to understand ourselves. You know, but in external way. I see in general, I'm speaking very generally, you know, and very simplistic, but the Indian culture was more into intimate joinery, try to understand. And so this intrigued so many Western people, So after that, after I was so much intrigued, then I start also to see to translate this into the artistic world. That was the most pleasurable thing that happened out of this phenomena of publishing my paintings, commenting the paintings. That the most pleasurable thing was exactly how much participation of youngs, and they still writing to me every day, more and more people, and young people saying, "Oh, okay, I'm a young India. I cannot afford to buy your paintings." They say, but I'm really in great admiration of that. How you learn how to draw. So many questions, so many interested, and basically they like my work. They like very much, um, and what I hope that happen, that they can get deeper in their culture, in their spirituality, because it's so rich. It's so rich. And before, stick to the materialistic and very superficial, Western lifestyle, I would say. I would say even American lifestyle. Um, eh, I'm speaking for the mass of people, before just getting too much into it, uh, have a look, to what you have inside in your tradition, in your scriptures, in your wise people, wise men, in your customs, which is very, very, very rich, to be uh, to try to be a new modern human being, which is balance. It's not all in consumism, capitalism, materialistic life, because it's very easy, to find things, and identify with them, and just a few minutes after you threw them away, creating so much garbage, uh, a balance, some material life, but some spiritual life, and if my attention to these topics by art can bring something to them, I'm realized, I would say. I love a lot the Bhishma Dev, because he seems to be in amongst all the character Bhishma. And remember Bhishma, the grandfather. Actually, it's almost there since the beginning, so it was very old and very strong, a great. He was the greater warrior there. And I would and he has got a lot of knowledge. He's the one that takes within um, so many secrets. I think, he gives me this idea. He gives me the idea he knows more than any other else. Apart from Krishna or Vishnu, let's say. But he knows more than anybody else, and he's very effective, And everybody, even when the Pandava became on the battlefield, they became his enemy. They became their enemy. Um, his enemy. And they were going there with great respect. They were knowing that he was kind of forced to take that part because of duty. So I would ask him where getting the strength to be so strong, stubborn, and powerful, in his vow, because actually I started in the vow, and he had the bone, to choose when to die, and that's why he was invictus, invictus, invincible, undefeatable. He was undefeatable. So at a certain point, because he one of the things should have gone in a certain direction, he decided to come off and die. Not only that, he was lying on the bed of arrows,
Yeah.
and he was in perfect control of his senses, and he gave last pearl of wiseness, of, wiseness to his nephew, and he had all of them, although Krishna, Arjuna was the one that killed him mostly. He hurled his arrows in his body, and actually he was also recognizing, Bhishma, recognizing which one were the arrows shot by Krishna, by Arjuna. You know that? He was recognizing, the arrows. So sitting down, because he made the human beings in the tale better after meeting him. That I would ask, how we can make humanity better. I have this big question, not because I'm thinking to them every day, but because you challenge me, if you are in front of someone, I would go in front of a great personality. So great questions. I have no vision at the moment, because in fact, when I painted the Mahabharata, I was getting even stories that are little aside, like Hidimbi, that is charming Bhima, you never saw all the moment in which the Pandavas leave Krishna and Draupadi asked Krishna to revenge her, to save her honor, because Draupadi was undressed, they tried to undress her, so, and I painted the moment in which Draupadi, she meets with Kunti. Kunti, receive her, in the house when they were in disguise as a brahmanas. So there are so many. Oh, for example, in the tent, that was one of my preferred painting. The scene is under a tent, because during the battle of Kurukshetra, at night they were going to the tent. They were recovering, and then they were make strategy. And I made this dark tent inside with a strong light from one side, and all the Pandavas were around trying the strategy, and Abhimanyu was there, Arjuna's son, and that was the moment in which his destiny was decided, and he became a young hero, and so there is in the main spot is on Arjuna, no, Yudhishthira in one side, touching the table, making the strategy, and then in the other side, a full face of this young hero, Abhimanyu, is there, And so, and then his destiny, I wanted to give the idea that that moment, his destiny for the day after was was settled, was decided. So what I want to say is that I mm, I choose the images according to my heart, to my emotion, and of course I put also other images, and more standard, more known, like Parthasarati, and
Yeah.
some part of the Battle of Kurukshetra. So more than choose an untold one, uh, mm, uh, I would make uh, uh, for other time for I mean, I would make the same subject, let's say same subject, but from another point of view,
Mm.
something like that.